continues to rewrite the record books. Alejandro Kirk with a grand slam, and yours, the touchdown, number 30. And the ball game is over. The Phillies cap 2025 with a victory. Second block to Rice. Mike Jastrzemski has homered again. A chance for two. The second one back to first. The Mets agonizing 3.5-month slow motion collapse is complete. A special scene in Seattle as we say farewell to an all-time legend. He struck him out. This very well could be the end of the road for Charlie Morton, and what a ride it has been. The Blue Jays are the AL East champ in 2025. Look it! Romeo runs the house in the bottom of the ninth.
Come on, Big Frank. Setting up outside. And the pitch is hit a long way into right field.
Get out!
And Deere at the wall. Can't get it.
Inside the park.
Deere is injured out there. Thomas being held up at third. He's got a triple and 2 RBIs. And listen to the Sox fans at County Stadium.
You know, off the bat, I think we both have to agree, Jim, that ball was out of the ballpark. The wind kept it in. This guy has great power the opposite field. He is so strong. I thought he nailed it. I mean, just out of here. There's a fastball out over the plate. Gets those big arms extended. 2 RBIs, and I got so excited there. I thought with Big Frank's speed, he was going to be able to get an inside the park home.
There are 2 kinds of people in this world. Those who love Old Bay and those who've never tried it. Because once you taste this Chesapeake Bay seasoning, you'll immediately be turned into a canvert. Old Bay goes great on seafood, chicken, corn on the cob, French fries, pretty much anything. Join the Legion of Canverts in America. Pick up a can today. And before you know it, this could be you. Old Bay, the can that connects us.
The 1-1 pitch. Broken bat and a fly ball left field. This is hit deep. Moving back to the wall, Knobloch. A broken bat home run for Thomas.
The barrel of the bat is at third base. Yep, at third base. Thomas hits a home run, his first of the year, and we talked about the wind. That helped that ball. And Suppan has given up 5 homers in just over 6 innings. He's well on his way, isn't he?
And I've seen Frank hit line drive home runs just fair down the line with broken bats. This one went over near the 375 sign in the left center field.
The next 2-2.
Davis to left and will hit. Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
I never move with slow-mo. Welcome to my dojo. There's other parts of so-so and chill like pro, yo. Focus like a GoPro. Ripping up this promo. Check out the scoreboard. Bring something with no. Going, it's going, it's going. Yo, it's gone. Your heart to stop. Cause Jake got strong and mighty. Undefeated, I beat it. Pull up the box, pull it down, then read it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Dog on your lips and Ozzy Smith backflips. Take a tip, give me tip, get onto it. I got ridiculous vibes without boosting it. You sit at home crying like a girl while I spread the gospel around the world, yo. The plots are written behind tracks that makes it smooth with the groove to make ears wanna listen. Add a little cut and a rhythm to back it up. Another show to my name, now I just stack them up. You think another way right back, but this ain't no ad jack. My hobbies are rhymes, some people try to be black, but that about time I come out. Call the show, BKB, let me turn it out, yo. Name take the state, born in 71. Gage, you know what time it is, I'm packing them guns. Your experience, I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stories. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Kakalaki. Half man, half podcast machine, back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. What's up, freaks? What's good? Welcome back into the dojo for chapter 184 in our historical, anthological, and biographical accounting of the players, characters, moments, stadiums, managers, and all the pop culture references that have shaped our perspective and knowledge of this beautiful tapestry of life we call baseball. I'm Jake Robinson. I got your hookup. Holler if you hear me. I will never charge this loyal audience for any baseball content I offer up here at BKP. No Patreon, no Twitch, no bonus pay-to-play subscriptions. I take the ball when it's my turn in the rotation. I climb the bump, and I give you all I got, and it will always be free. I'm joined as usual in the dojo today with my trusty compadre of chaos, the chocolate tabby of tenaciousness, my felonious feline of ferocity, my boy Gunner, chomping at the bit to get this train rolling down the tracks towards our baseball bets of this week. We got more ground to cover this week than Bill Mazeroski out at second base of Ford Field, so I like to get all the stragglers hanging out on the Terrapin Station platform to kiss and hug your loved ones goodbye as I begin the final prep for departure. It's a beautiful night for baseball. As I gaze to the west of Terrapin, I can see clearly inside our immaculate jewel box retro ballpark, down that left field line that disappears at home plate, as our hometown BKP 9 have taken the field in anticipation of tonight's contest. The starting pitcher has completed his warm-up tosses. The catcher has gone down to second with an absolute seed on the bag. The infield is now pulling that rock around the diamond with a little snap and swagger, and the home plate umpire has cleaned up the dish and said those two magical words that reverberate all summer long: play ball. As the visiting team's leadoff stick approaches the dish, that's my cue, as usual, to get the show on the road, so I'm calling all aboard! As I will have Gunner set our time and destination for May 27th, 1968, Columbus, Georgia, to bear witness to the genesis backstory of this week's topic, as I will do an archaeological dig into the baseball path laid by the Big Hurt, the incomparable, the iconic Frank Thomas. So, hurry, step right up, get in where you're fitting. You can post up in our modern marvel of science and ingenuity in one of our expansive lounges or private boxcars for our trip out to Columbus, Georgia in May of 1968. As Gunner is reaching the necessary quantum speeds needed to crack 6.0 gigahertz of RF on our spectrum analyzer, he's tapping into anomalous, traversable wormholes, bending both baseball space and time, tilting the celestial scales in our favor, and blurring the lines between reality and dimensions, all in an effort to take us safely back to our targeted time and destination for the beginning of this week's profile of the Big Hurt, Frank Thomas. Now, obviously, being enshrined in the pantheon of immortals, it puts a player in a select elite class of ball players among his contemporaries. As of 2025, with the recent inductions of CC Sabathia and Ichiro Suzuki, only 62 players out of the 351 total, that's a 17% clip, have accumulated the required 75% of Hall of Fame votes in the first year of eligibility. Now, Frank Thomas is one of those dudes. And he did things in his career that, quite frankly, no one has been able to accomplish before or since. Even in the context of playing in one of the game's greatest offensive eras of the game, Frank Thomas's raw production is quite simply staggering. One combination of analytical metrics stands out when chopping up his numbers. No other man in the history of baseball has strung together 7 consecutive seasons with 20-plus home runs, 100 or more RBI, 100 walks, and 300 average. And he reached those numbers from 1991 to 1997. In the long history of recorded baseball stats, no one has ever achieved that level of offensive dominance for 70% of a decade. Not the Great Bambino, not the Iron Horse, not the Splendid Splinter, not the Say Hey Kid, not Fat Albert, none of them. The line forms behind the Big Hurt. And Frank looked more like a big tight end looking to create space in the middle of the end zone before catching a 10-yard strike for a touchdown than he ever did as a baseball player. And in a strange way, he was ostensibly a contact hitter trapped inside of a slugger's body with a judicious knowledge of the strike zone and quick hand-eye coordination. He was a dog in the hunt, looking to inflict pain on opposing teams, thus earning his well-deserved moniker, the Big Hurt. In the now infamous 2007 Mitchell Report, U.S. Democrat Senator George Mitchell from the great state of Maine was tasked by baseball commissioner Bud Selig to investigate the illegal use of steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs in the game. And Senator Mitchell reached out to 5 major league players who had spoken previously about performance enhancers, and he's basically seeking their cooperation in the investigation. Well, Frank Thomas would be the only active player willing to meet the good senator, which prompted the slugger to reply, "It was weird. The whole reason I did it was because I genuinely couldn't believe that other guys weren't talking to him. I got nothing to hide, so what the hell? Why not?" His career stats are even more impressive when viewed through the lens of, by all accounts, that Frank was a clean player during a shady era of prolific video game-like offense. He achieved a lifetime batting average of .301, clobbered 521 home runs, drove in 1,704 runs with 1,666 walks and 2,468 hits. He is the all-time White Sox franchise leader in home runs, doubles, RBIs, walks, OBP, and SLUG. And Thomas would achieve all of this through hard work, persistence, and never taking anything for granted, a lesson he learned very early in life. And speaking of Frank's early life, here we are, nerds, as Gunner has us ripping through that last reversible wormhole and straight into Columbus, Georgia, May 27th, 1968, as Big Frank Sr. and wife Charlie May welcome Frank into the world, the couple's first child together. Now, Frank had 3 older sisters, Gloria, Mary, and Sharon, and an older brother, Michael, all of whom were half-siblings from Charlie May's previous marriage. His father was the original Big Frank, and he held various jobs. His mom worked at Fieldcrest Milling, filling out orders, and Senior was a part-time bondsman, an animal catcher, and a delivery truck driver for a liquor distributor. He was also the deacon at the Nazareth Baptist Church where he preached his weekly sermons, and he was a typical, simple, blue-collar American father who preached placing God, family, and education as your top priorities in life. But you also want to see the ball, swing at strikes, and always clean your plate after eating. While kids around the globe dream of reaching the majors by imitating their heroes in the backyard, the young Thomas set his mind and energy into becoming a big league player at the age of 9, and he is determined to become great at his craft. Now, his motivation was fueled by a profound loss that stuck with him throughout his life. Thanksgiving Day, 1977, tragedy strikes the Thomas family when his younger sister Pamela loses her battle with leukemia at the age of 2. And in reflection, Thomas would say that his sister's tragic death would inspire him. And from that point on, he kept thinking to himself that something is probably wrong with me as well, and I better get everything I can out of life. My memories of my little sister have stuck with me every day of my life. The Thomas family was a tight-knit unit, and Frank was kind of spoiled by his older siblings and doting father. Frank excelled in sports, but baseball is where he stood out. At the age of 9, when his peers are barely able to hit the ball out of the infield, the exit velocity coming off of Frank's bat was jarring, to say the least. He had the natural ability to let the barrel hunt, and at a young age, he's hitting shots all over the field. As he gets older, he would eventually grow into his towering 6'5", 275-pound frame, and he would never forget how his older siblings chipped in to get the growing boy a pair of shoes. By the time Frank is 14 years old, he's wearing size 14 shit kickers. Thomas establishes his legendary plate discipline at an early age. And his father remembers, from the time Frank was in the Little League, he had a good eye. I would always tell him, don't swing at bad pitches. Watch the ball from the pitcher's hand all the way through the hitting zone. It started at home, continued to the Little Leagues, high school, college, and the pros. He had good teachers along the way, and he bought into what they were selling. He plays baseball, basketball, and football while attending Columbus High School. And the baseball team wins the 1984 Georgia State title, and Thomas is named the Georgia Prep Baseball Player of the Year. Even as a sophomore in high school, he's displaying big league pop. High school coach Bobby Howard recalled how former Orioles and Astros first baseman Glenn Davis showed up at the school as a minor league prospect to work out. Well, Frank shows up on the field. He's wearing high-top basketball shoes. He's barreling up pitchers like the minor league prospects, and he's hitting line drive ropes all over the field. And they couldn't believe it. Howard remembered Glenn turns to him and says, "Who is this big boomer you got playing first base with tennis shoes on?" And the prospects began calling him the Big Boomer, a precursor to the Big Hurt moniker he would become known as. He develops a rep and a scouting report, goes out throughout the league, and pitchers begin to give the kid very little hit. And Frank begins to get frustrated. He breaks away from his patient philosophy of waiting for his pitches and begins swinging wildly at anything even close. But Coach Howard has a fix for Frank's newfound bad habits. He would count all the bad pitches that Frank would swing at in a game, and he'd make the kid run that many sprints at the next practice. And Frank remembers that plate discipline, he came back rather quickly because of his total disdain for running sprints. And Howard would say Frank was a natural, but I would have to sit on top of him, challenge him to be better. It wasn't hard. Frank loved to hit. He was so passionate about hitting that he would Well, he would hit before playing basketball games during the off season. He just wanted to hit. He was obsessed with the sound, the feel, everything about hitting a baseball appealed to young Frank. After Frank graduates from high school, he seems to be facing two career paths. The first option, and seemingly the most obvious option, is for Frank to get drafted by a major league team and begin his professional baseball career. However, to the surprise of many, no major league teams draft the high school phenom, and he commits to playing tight end for Auburn University in 1986. Auburn football coach Pat Dye exempted Frank from attending spring practices, allowing him to play baseball for the university. And the reason for the draft snub was that most major league teams assumed that drafting Frank would be a waste of a draft pick due to his scholarship obligations. But Auburn baseball coach Hal Baird, he was thinking the total opposite. He was convinced that Frank would naturally get drafted and just sign with whatever team drafted him, and he never thought in a million years the blue chip phenom would suit him in Auburn and cry out War Eagle on a school baseball field. Luckily for Baird, Frank was ready to roll after the draft snub. And Baird continues, we just figured he'd come in, see some playing time as a freshman, recalled Baird, but that all changed as soon as he stepped into the batting cage of his first practice. The first pitch he sees, he smokes a line drive over shortstop and into the left center field gap, and I knew after that swing, he was an everyday player in the SEC. He did more than just play. He dominated. Freshman Frank led the team in RBI, walks, total bases, slugging percentage, and homers at the ripe age of 19 years old. He was named to the All-SEC team, and he makes the roster for Team USA in the 1987 Pan Am Games, which the team would lose to Cuba in the tournament finals. In all, Frank plays one season of football at Auburn. He makes the team as a redshirt freshman, catches 3 passes from 45 yards, and Coach Dye is convinced that Frank had the God-given ability to become one of the greatest tight ends in Auburn history, but it wasn't meant to be. Frank suffers a knee injury during football practice, leading him to abandon the sport and focus solely on baseball. And even though his football career had come to an abrupt end, his time on the team, it helped propel him and to become the professional athlete he would become. He developed a hardcore weight training regimen, playing SEC football, and he incorporated it into his baseball development. All the work made me physically stronger, Frank would say. It made the difference. I mean, without it, I don't think I would have been a first-round pick. During Frank's sophomore season, Coach Dye from the football team asked Coach Baird from the baseball team if Frank has a legitimate shot at playing ball in the majors. To which Coach Baird confirms that Frank does, in fact, have a chance to play Major League Baseball, saying the sky is the limit with Frank. To which Coach Dye shoots back, good, then we'll just keep him on a football scholarship and let him play baseball for Auburn. The SEC pitchers, they wanted no part of Frank's bats during his second sophomore season. He was so refined and polished when he got here, Baird opines, he had a better understanding about the strike zone than most of the professionals that I played with in my career. Frank only hits 9 home runs, but his .385 average is tops in the SEC, as well as his .509 OBP. His lack of power, it kept him off the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. And it's just another snub to make Frank feel slighted and motivate him to achieve success in his little sister's name. Between his sophomore and junior seasons, Frank plays in the Cape Cod Wood Bat League, where collegiates play a minor league-like schedule. And the 1988 Cape Cod League was a beautiful thing. It produced 40 major leaguers, including players like Jeff Kent, Jeff Bagwell, Chuck Knobloch, Mo Vaughn, and Frank Thomas. In a home run derby at Orleans Park, Frank takes advantage of the 300-foot distance to left field wall, and he beats out Mo Vaughn for the derby win. Now, the 1971 MLB draft class, it produced 4 Hall of Famers in Harold Baines, Paul Molitor, Ozzie Smith, and Tim Raines, making it the most honored draft class in baseball history. The 1989 draft was even more powerful when Hall of Famers Trevor Hoffman, Jeff Bagwell, Jim Tomei, and Big Frank, all Hall of Famers, were selected. And it's also the draft that produced Barry Bonds, who, quite honestly, is Hall of Fame caliber. So, technically, that draft produced 5 Hall of Famers. Frank was selected by the Chicago White Sox in the first round, number 7 overall. He starts his professional baseball career in the Gulf Coast League at a low-A rookie ball level. League pitching, it poses no serious challenge to Frank as he hits .365 in 65 plate appearances before being promoted to high-A Sarasota White Sox. In 55 games at Sarasota, Frank batted .277 with 4 home runs, 30 ribs, and the solid production earns him an invite to the 1990 White Sox spring training. And Frank has about as good of a spring training as one could expect from a 22-year-old rookie kid. He goes 9 for 17 at the plate for a .529 BA with 2 home runs and 7 RBI. One of those dongs came off of Hall of Fame fireballer Nolan Ryan, a majestic shot that clears the left-field scoreboard at the Texas Rangers Park in Port Charlotte, Florida. And White Sox manager Jeff Torborg, after picking his jaw up off the floor, remarks, "I didn't measure it, but it was a blast. It looked like a good 500-foot shot to me." Despite the impressive showing, White Sox GM Larry Himes has already determined that Frank needs more seasoning on the farm, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And manager Torborg disagrees with his GM's assessment. He argues specifically to add Frank's name to the roster, but the GM overrules his pleas. Frank would start the 1990 season playing AA ball for the Birmingham Barons. Around this time, Frank meets his personal hitting guru and Walt Rainiac, who was hired to be the new White Sox hitting coach. And that would be a position he would hold until 1995, but the two would stay in constant contact with each other long after his tenure in South Chicago had expired. In 2000, a gaggle of reporters asked the respected guru of swing who he considered the greatest hitter he had ever seen. And after careful reflection, Rainiac replies, "If I absolutely needed a base hit, I'd take Wade Boggs. But if you're asking me who's the best all-around hitter I've ever seen, it's Frank Thomas, hands down. He can beat you with a single down the right field line or bomb the left." At Birmingham, Frank continues the school league pitching with a .323 BA, 18 home runs, 71 rib sandwiches. He leads the Southern League in slug, OBP, runs scored before being called up to the show. On August 2nd, 1990, Frank makes his major league debut against the Milwaukee Brewers and southpaw pitcher Teddy Higuera. He goes hitless in the first game, but he collects his first major league hit the next day off of Brewers pitcher Mark Knudsen, a 2-run triple. And with the newfound confidence in the youngster, the triple catapults him to a modest 7-game history. On August 28th, Thomas launches the first home run of his career off of Twins pitcher Gary Wayne. Thomas nails down the starting first base position, and he finishes his rookie campaign with a .330 average, 7 home runs, 31 RBI, a .983 OPS in 60 games played. The start of the 1991 season was a new page for White Sox baseball. The team debuted a new logo and color scheme for their home uniforms. Gone were the blue, red, and white striped tops with the batsman logo that the team had been using since 1976. And in with the brand new white, silver, and black tops with Old English Sox word emblazoned on the hat. The White Sox, who through the years had some of the most disturbing uniform combinations ever, hit the jackpot with their new threads, and the new gear begins being adopted by many West Coast rappers at the time, such as NWA, with Dr. Dre proudly featuring the new scheme and logo in the popular Nothing But a G-Thing Baby music video in 1991. The hat is also prominently mentioned in the Fuck With Dre Day single. I got my chrome to the side of his White Sox hat. You try to check my homie, you best check yourself, cause when you diss Dre, you diss yourself, mother shucker. Oh man, what a game-changing album. The Chronic album, it's a game changer in the history of hip-hop. It takes a relatively niche genre in rap music, and it makes it an international phenomenon. And the new White Sox lids, which resemble Los Angeles Raiders and LA Kings color schemes of black and silver, they sell like hotcakes. There are hardly a hip-hop band at the time that doesn't have at least one White Sox cap in their collection. And to give the rebranding proper context, in 1990, New Era made 9,000 White Sox hats. In 1991, with demand at a fever pitch, the hat company made 544,000 White Sox lids as they became the hottest hats on the market. And for the most part, I guess, Frank embraces the new color scheme and logo, and he looks more like a tight end for the Los Angeles Raiders in the batter's box than a baseball player for the White Sox. He torches league pitching in his first full season in the Bigs. He bats .318 in 158 games. He bags out 32 home runs, drives in 109 runs, leads the American League in walks with 138, a .453 OBP, a 1.06 OPS, and a 180 OPS plus. The White Sox finished with an 87-75 record, good enough for second place in the AL West, and the personal effort for Frank was good enough for him to finish third in MVP voting behind Cal Ripken Jr. and Cecil Fielder in his first full year in the majors. Teammate Steve Psycho Lyons once quipped that Frank is too big to be a man and too small to be a horse. Early in his career, people began making the inevitable comparisons to fellow White Sox teammate and Auburn alum Bo Jackson. Now, their collegiate football and baseball careers never overlapped at Auburn, and to Thomas, the comparisons were unwarranted and logically flawed. You can't compare me to Bo, Frank would say. That's just the bottom line. Bo might be the greatest natural athlete ever to walk the planet. Please don't compare me to that guy. But what did separate Frank from Bo, and Frank from everyone else as well, was his unwavering eye and plate discipline. His overall command of the strike zone as a hitter at such a young age, it stood out immediately. Teammate catcher Carlton Fisk, who had an innate respect for guys who played the game the right way, was in awe of how advanced Frank's approach was, saying, he's got a pretty good idea of the strike zone at the plate. Most big-time hitters, they don't have that sort of patience or that kind of discipline that he has at the plate, especially at his age. At the beginning of the 1992 season, the 23-year-old Frank was being compared to some of the game's all-time greats. Washington Post columnist Thomas Boswell wrote, "If there was ever another Ted Williams, a perfect blend of hitter and slugger, Thomas might just very well be the one." And with huge expectations resting on the broad shoulders of Frank Thomas, he and the team negotiate a 3-year, $4.3 million deal, which is a relative steal that would later lead friction between their superstar and the team. And it's around this time that White Sox play-by-play broadcaster Hawk Harrelson coined him with the greatest nickname in baseball history. I mean, it is a moniker that both summarizes Frank's immense size and what he was capable of doing to opposing pitchers and the 216 stitches that hold a Major League Baseball together. He nicknames the young prodigy the Big Hurt. Certainly as apropos of a nickname as there has ever been. The White Sox finished the 1992 campaign going 86-76, finishing in third place in the AL West, 10 games behind the Oakland A's. And for the second year in a row, Big Hurt leads the team with a 7.0 WAR. He leads the American League in doubles with 46 walks. Doubles with 46, walks 122, OBP and OPS. And check it out, nerds. This is the part of the program where I make like a pair of John Stockton shorts and fall out for spots, drawing a close to the first act of the Frank Thomas audio bio. I'm going to pull my candy apple red Ferrari into the paddock, switch out this batch of medium compound tires for a brand new set of softs, before I head back onto the grid to make a run for a podium finish with this week's audio bio. When we return, I'll pick up right where I left off, headed into the 1993 MLB season, where Frank Thomas is entrenched in third year of one of the most dominant stretches of offensive displays of bat-to-ball propensity the baseball universe has ever witnessed. So, let me step out, pay some bills, hook up my boy Gunner with the treats for a great Christmas segment owed, formulate a mental timeline for Acts 2 and 3 of the Frank Thomas story. BRB Seamheads, meet me on the dark side of the moon.
For the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break I got. Yet today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I've been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. When you look around, wouldn't you consider it a privilege to associate yourself with such a fine-looking group of men that is standing in uniform in this ballpark today, when you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so you can have an education and build your body? It's a blessing. But I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
That one hit a mile in left center field. Tie game. Home runs during the regular season, his first since the 11th of September, and Chicago pulls even at 3. Now you know where he got his nickname, dubbed by White Sox broadcaster Ken Harrelson. And you see where that pitch was? Back foot comes off the ground. Anywhere out over the plate. Forget about it.
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Gein, executive producer of Backwards K Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fish and hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection, as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks, and one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support two grassroots companies by two former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Ma, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There's also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summertime shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
Deep to left field. Back and number 500 for Frank Thomas. And the fans here at the Dome acknowledging an historic event. Frank Thomas has just hit career home run number 500.
Well, 10% have come against the Minnesota Twins. Of those 500 home runs, his 50th career home run against the Twins. And everybody congratulating Frank Thomas, the 21st player to reach 500 career home runs.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values. New values. New
Okay, nerds, welcome back into the dojo, and this is Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. This week we're doing a deep-depth profile and archaeological dig into the baseball path laid by the big hurt, Frank Thomas. We covered his youth, growing up in Columbus, Georgia, with parents Big Frank Sr. and Charlie May, as well as his three sisters and brothers, who are byproducts of a previous marriage for Charlie May. It should have been four sisters, as the parents had another daughter, Pamela. But when Frank is 9, Pamela dies on Thanksgiving Day in 1977, losing her battle with leukemia. and it has a profound impact on Frank's future. Deep down, Frank fears that he may have limited time on this planet as well, and he makes a personal vow to get everything he can out of what life has to offer. The death of his little sister propels Frank to go all in and pursue his dream of playing Major League Baseball. It would also lead Frank to participate throughout his life in various charitable endeavors focused on leukemia. He would show at charities, charge $1 for his autograph, and donate the proceeds to the Leukemia Society of America. In the Rod Carew bio, I told you how Rod's daughter, Michelle, battled leukemia until her death in 1996. And Frank saw a lot of his little sister in Michelle's fight against a deadly disease. He donates $45,000 in her name to the Leukemia Society of America and the Michelle Carew Fund when the Angels come to South Chicago in 1997. He was a natural at football, basketball, and baseball in high school, and he was surely going to be drafted as a prep phenom in the 1985 MLB Amateur Draft as Frank led the 1984 Columbus High School baseball team to a state title, and he's named the Georgia Baseball Player of the Year. But shockingly, his name is not called during the draft, so he accepts a full scholarship to play football at Auburn University. And despite football coach Pat Dye's anointing Frank as the next great tight end at Auburn, Frank plays one season of SEC football, catches 3 passes for 45 yards. Fortunately for the baseball universe, Thomas hurts his knee during practice and decides to quit the team and focus solely on baseball. The decision pays off as Frank electrifies the team and manager Hal Baird on the very first day of practice as he's hitting ropes in the outfield gaps. He starts as a freshman. He leads the teams in RBIs, walks, slugs, and homers at the age of 19. And he's got 2 things going for him. He has natural, immense size that was enhanced by the weightlifting regimen he employed while playing SEC football, and he always had a focused, disciplined approach in the batter's box. A trait that was instilled in him by his father, who had preached the value of placing God, family, and education as the top priorities in life, but also to see the ball and only swing at strikes. In Frank's sophomore year at Auburn, Coach Dye asked Coach Baird about Thomas's performance on the field, and he asked the baseball coach flat out if Frank is the real deal, if he has a future as a professional baseball player. When Coach Baird shoots back, hell yeah, the big fella is a legitimate baseball prospect, Coach Dye says, great, we'll keep him on a football scholarship and let him just play baseball. During his junior year, it's becoming apparent that Big Frank is a man among boys in the SEC. He won the conference batting title for the 2nd straight year. He finished 3rd in conference with 19 home runs. He set the school record again with 83 RBIs. He's named an All-American to the SEC All-Tournament team and the NCAA Regional All-Star squad. In his 3 years of scintillating play at Auburn, he set 14 school records, including both season and career marks in home runs, extra base hits, total bases, walks, and OBP. And after 3 years of blistering these SEC rag arms, Thomas is called up. His name is called by the Chicago White Sox in the 1989 MLB Amateur Draft, number 7 overall, in a draft class that produced 4 future Hall of Famers in Trevor Hoffman, Jeff Bagwell, Jim Tomei, and Frank, as well as Barry Bonds. He has a veritable rocket attached to his ass. He flies through the Chicago farm system, and he receives an invite to the 1990 White Sox spring training camp. He hits .529 in the camp with a majestic, memorable dong off of Rangers Hall of Fame pitcher Nolan Ryan that is estimated to have traveled close to 500 feet or 152 meters for those of you who use the metric standards of measurement. Despite the impressive display, Frank is sent to AA Birmingham for seasoning and work on his defensive skills. White Sox manager Jeff Torborg protests vehemently, and Frank takes the demotion in stride. He takes it out on league pitching. He hits .323 with 18 home runs, 71 RBIs, and 109 games before he's called up to the show on August 2nd, 1990. In 60 games for the White Sox in 1990, he leaves the Southside people spellbound with his upside and his promise. He finishes his rookie campaign with a .354, .454, .529 slash line, 7 home runs, 31 RBIs, and 240 plate appearances. 1991 saw the White Sox rebrand their logo and color scheme to a silver and black combo that is the rage of hip-hop baseball fans. With his new threads, Frank would begin a 7-year stretch of offensive dominance that has yet to be matched and was never seen before. By the end of the 1991 campaign, the improving White Sox, led by Frank, finished with a 87-75 record, good enough for second place, 8 games behind the eventual world champion Minnesota Twins. In his first 4 years in the bigs, Frank gives but a taste of what's to come when he finishes with a 7.0 WAR, leads the American League of Walks with 138, OBP at .453, a 1.006 OPS, and a 180 OPS plus. He wins his first Silver Slugger award of his career as the best offensive first baseman in the American League, and he comes in third for MVP votes behind Cal Ripken Jr. and Cecil Fielder. 1992 is proof that 1991 was no fluke. Even though the White Sox fall to third place in the AL West, behind Oakland by 10 games, Frank leads the league in doubles, walks for the second year in a row, OBP for the second consecutive season, OPS. And he finishes 8th in AL MVP voting behind Dennis Eckersley. By 1993, Frank, who is now affectionately called the Big Hurt by White Sox play-by-play manager Hawk Harrelson and the Southside people, he's a bona fide star. He makes his first All-Star appearance. He signs a massive shoe deal with Reebok. The tennis shoe company makes Frank the spokesman for the brand, and they introduce him to the nation with commercials pimping out their brand. Frank leads the Southsiders to an AL West pennant with a 94-68 record and the first postseason appearance since 1983, despite suffering an injury to his left tricep. The White Sox would fall to the eventual world champion Toronto Blue Jays in 6 games of the ALCS. For his efforts during the season, Frank is awarded the AL Most Valuable Player Award. He's elected to his first All-Star team. He wins a second Silver Slugger Award. He mashes out 36 big flies, drives in 124, and he finishes the campaign with a .317, .426, .607 slash line and a 1.033 OPS. Frank becomes just the third White Sox player to take home MVP honors after Nellie Fox in 1959 and Dick Allen in 1972. And in reflection, Thomas remembers how he was kind of nervous assuming that there would be 4 or 5 guys splitting that first place vote for the award. As a reward, the Southsiders reward their 25-year-old prodigy with a 4-year contract extension with a club option in 1999 and 2000 for a total of $43 million, which is, at the time, the second highest contract in the game behind only Barry Bonds. The 1994 MLB season will always be known as the what could have been season for many players in the majors, as a player strike cut the season short. In the National League, the Montreal Expos had the best record in the majors with a 74-40 record before the season was shut down. Giants third baseman Matt Williams had 43 home runs and was a legitimate challenge to Roger Maris's single-season record of 61 dingers. And Tony Gwynn was chasing Ted Williams' 406 mark set in 1941 as the last player to hit 400 in a season, when the rug was pulled from under Tony Gwynn and his incredible season. Mr. Padre was batting a robust .395 with 45 games left on the schedule. Frank himself was also putting up a career year before the abrupt end to this campaign. He and Walt Riniak worked hard in the cage during the offseason, looking to avoid one of Frank's customary slow starts to the year, and it pays off. In April, he bats .295 with 8 home runs and 20 RBI. And sidebar, folks, many of Frank's teammates through the years, they called him the Stat King because of his penchant for scouring the daily stats for motivation. Hitting guru Walt Riniak really never saw anything wrong with this practice, saying Pete Rose was the same exact way. That's the way Frank was built to stay motivated. He ain't trying to fool anybody. He doesn't try to hide his ambitions. He's out in the open about it, and I respect him for it. Rose always knew what he was hitting, and he always knew what numbers everyone else was putting up. He wanted more hits than anyone else who has played the game, and Frank had the very same quality about him as well. That drive, that determination. It was the motivating factor for Frank's constant improvement, and it served him well. Thomas makes his second All-Star team, and he leads all first basemen in votes. He participates in his first home run derby, which was won by Ken Griffey Jr. In 113 games, he smashes 38 home runs. He bats .353. He drives in 101 runs. He leads the league once again in walks with 109 and runs scored with 106. Once again, he takes home MVP honors, becoming just the 11th player to win the hardware back-to-back seasons. When the season is cut short, the White Sox are leading the AL Central with a 67-46 record, and the unexpected time off and allowed Thomas to focus solely on his growing family unit, wife Elise, and their 2 children, Sloan and Sterling. And the time off also gave him time to set up Big Hurt Enterprises, which handled his marketing, fan mail, and fundraising opportunities. On March 28, 1995, with the contentious stalemate between management and players that cost the baseball universe almost a quarter of the 1994 season, as well as the playoffs and the World Series. All that is in the rearview mirror, and a shortened 144-game schedule is devised, and the Big Hurt picks off where he left off, making the All-Star team once again. At the Fall Classic, he participates in the Home Run Derby, and this time he beats out Albert Bell in the finals. He would also drive in the only 2 runs for the American League with a home run when he melts a fastball by Reds pitcher John Smiley over the left field fence at the ballpark in Arlington. As a team, the White Sox stumbled to third place finish in the AL Central with a 68-76 record, 32 games behind the Cleveland Indians. The rest of the late 1990s, they follow a similar pattern for the Chi Sox. Southside Fanatics, dying for World Series title, were routinely frustrated by a slew of second-place finishes in 96, 97, 98, and the 99 seasons. Despite making 2 more All-Star appearances in 1996 and 1997, Frank begins to bear the wrath of the fans and the local media. To his detractors, he was the personification of what was wrong with the modern-day ball player, who was focused on one's own performance rather than the success of the team. Combined with his obsession for his own personal stats and his personal branding opportunities, he would become a target for disgraced Chicago Sun-Times journalist Jerry Mariotti, who nicknamed Frank the Big Killjoy. And when Frank was sidelined by injuries, Mariotti would belittle the Southside Slugger with the moniker the Big Skirt. Not helping Frank's view of him, Tom assigns a massive deal that, on the surface, appears to be an $80 million over 9-year deal. However, the contract was so heavily incentivized, with much of that cash being deferred. It was also attached to a diminished skills clause that the team could invoke, altering its take-home play and rendering him a free agent. The clause would prove to be the ultimate wedge between Frank and the White Sox in the end. The 1999 season would be one of the most difficult years in Frank's life, both professionally and personally. He continued to play with a painful bone spurs in his foot, and his usual production, it just wasn't there. He ended the season with a 3.05 BA, but he only hits 15 home runs. After the season, he had surgery to remove the spur, and normal bone spurs are usually around the size of a dime, but the one that they removed from his foot that hampered Frank was the size of a chicken wing. His personal life is in shambles as well. He's going through a divorce with Elise. His good friend Derek Thomas of the NFL Kansas City Chiefs dies of a heart attack. His agent Robert Fraley died in a plane crash and also took the life of pro golfer Payne Stewart. His father Frank was on a dialysis machine 3 times a week for kidney failure and a weak heart. After the tumultuous season, filled with physical and emotional turmoil, Frank links up with his offensive spirit animal and Walt Riniak, and the two men hit the cage hard to regain his stroke. As Frank remembers it felt like old times, and Walt having fish in about 30 minutes. He ends the 2000 season looking a lot like his younger self once again. He ends the campaign posting a 6.0 WAR. He collects 191 hits, bangs out 44 doubles, 43 home runs, 112 RBIs, and 328, 436, 625 slash line. He wins his 4th and final Silver Slugger Award, and for the 5th time in his career, he finishes in the top 5 for AL MVP voting when he comes in second to A's first baseman Jason Giambi. The White Sox finally break through as a team, winning the AL Central, but they would be quickly choked out by the Seattle Mariners in the sweep during the ALDS. Unfortunately, the 2001 season was yet another forgettable campaign for the Big Hurt. 20 games into the season, Frank tears his right tricep, diving for a ball hit by Ichiro Suzuki. The injury required surgery, and he misses the rest of the year. The same week that he suffers that injury, his father, the man that had ingrained his disciplined plate approach as a kid and embraced baseball conscience, he passes away from kidney failure. The diminished skills clause in his contract becomes a point of contention between the superstar and the White Sox, further adding to the stress between the two parties. He asked for a deal in 2001 before his injury, and White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf assures his icon that while the team has no interest in extending his contract at the moment, he had no intentions of invoking the diminished skills clause in his contract. The White Sox finished the year with another second-place finish, and bad blood between manager Jerry Manuel and Frank leads the manager to benching the superstar for being late to a game. And even though Reinsdorf had promised Frank that he would not invoke the diminished skills clause in his contract. Rumors are swirling around like the prevailing southwest winds in Chicago. In the last home game of the 2002 campaign, the Southside Fanatics give their legend a standing ovation in his last at-bat at Comiskey Park. After the game, Frank thanked the crowd for their support, but he was defiant and stubborn, saying, "I fully expect to be back. I built a legacy here, and I'm not about to throw that away." On October 6, 2002, the White Sox notified Frank that they would be invoking the diminished skills clause in his contract, making him a free agent. And to his credit, Frank does his due diligence. He tests the market, but he decides to return to Chicago to play for the White Sox. He signed a 2-year deal with the team that ran through the 2006 season. In 2003, Frank returns to Chicago, and he returns to form. He hits his 400th career home run on July 25th off of Tampa Devil Rays pitcher Jorge Sosa. And once again, at the end of the year, the White Sox finish in second place. But optimism is abound going into the 2004 season. There's a new, refreshing aura around the team, with newly hired Ozzie Guillen taking over as the team skipper. Ozzie and Frank had played together for 8 years, and Frank was looking forward to performing for his gregarious new manager. The season didn't turn out differently, though, as the White Sox once again finished in second place, and Frank's season is cut short when he suffers a left ankle stress fracture in early July. At age 37, the 2005 season would be Frank's last with the White Sox. He made his return in later May after recuperating from the off-season surgery on his left ankle. But on July 21st, he refractured it, and he's limited to just 34 games. He would miss the historic playoff and World Series run that he had worked so hard to attain during his career in Chicago. And after the White Sox beat the Houston Astros for the World Championship, Frank tells the group of reporters surrounding him that no matter what I do in my career from here on out, it's all gravy. I always wanted to do what we did here, and that's win a World Championship. After it was all said and done, his childhood dominating the gridiron, sandlots, and hardwood parquets in Columbus, Georgia. His crossroad moments at Auburn when he decides to scrap football and concentrate on baseball. Being drafted number 7 overall by the White Sox. The 448 home runs and 307 BA in his White Sox career. All the second place finishes. The near-miss playoff losses to the Blue Jays and the Mariners. All the injuries and personal loss. Frank was finally a world champion, bathing in champagne in the only city he had ever known as a professional baseball player. But all the good feelings and joy will be tempered during the offseason as the White Sox and Frank filed for divorce from one another. And the separation leaves a bad taste in Frank's mouth. In early November, the club buys out the remainder of Frank's contract and they trade center fielder Aaron Rowan for Jim Tomei on the 25th of November. 5 days later, the club re-signs first baseman Paul Konerko, which ostensibly fills 2 positions in DH and first base, leaving Frank with no room on the roster. And the indignity is made even worse when instead of telling Frank of their plans face-to-face, Frank is angered when he checks his voicemail and listens to a message left by White Sox GM Kenny Williams after the Konerko signing, informing him the team was going to go in a different direction. Despite Jerry Reinsdorf saying it would kill him to see Thomas in another uniform, that's exactly what happened, as Frank signs a 1-year incentive-laden deal based on plate appearances and staying off the disabled list with the Oakland A's. His season with the new teams starts out dreadfully slow, even by Frank's standards. On May 22nd, he makes his return to Comiskey Park with a paltry 178 batting average, and he's greeted with a moving video tribute and a 3-minute standing ovation by the White Sox fans as he steps into the box for his first plate appearance. The goodwill and love Frank received from the adoring crowd, it lit a spark inside of Frank, and he drops 2 bombs in that game. After the game, Frank goes white hot. He bats .270 with the 39 home runs, and he finishes 4th in AL MVP behind Justin Morneau, Derek Jeter, and David Ortiz at the age of 38. Once again, Thomas is a free agent. He signs a 2-year, $18 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays as a starting designated hitter. He starts the season just 13 home runs shy of the 500 home run benchmark. On June 28, 2007, he launches a Carlos Silva breaking ball over the left field fence at the Metrodome in a game versus the Twins, making the Big Hurt the 21st player in MLB history to reach the 500 home run club. 2008 was Frank's last year as a player. The Blue Jays released him in late April, and he resigns with the A's. On August 9th, he crashed the final home run of his Major League career when he dispatches an Armando Galarraga pitch over the outfield fence of Comerica Park in a game versus the Tigers. The final dong was number 521 and tied him for 18th on the all-time list with Willie McCovey and Ted Williams. His final game came a month later in a 12-2 loss to the Twins, which sees him go 2 for 4 with a run. The final brick in the legacy of the Big Hurt. Time eventually heals all wounds, and in 2009, Frank returns to Chicago as a White Sox color analyst on Comcast Sportsnet, and he would go on to become an analyst for Fox Sports and is a frequent guest on the MLB Network. In 2010, he's proclaimed a White Sox ambassador. His number 35 is retired on August 29th of that year. In 2011, a statue in Frank's likeness is unveiled in the outfield concourse, immortalizing him among fellow White Sox greats like Louis Aparicio, Harold Baines, Charles Comiskey, Carlton Fisk, Nellie Fox, Minnie Mignoso, Billy Pierce. And a Paul Konerko statue would join the immortal soon after his retirement in 2014. On January 18th, 2014, Frank Thomas, along with Braves pitcher Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, were elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. It was only the second time that 3 first ballot dudes were elected in the same class, and the only time it happened before was the inaugural class in 1936. Eventually, managers Joe Torre, Tony La Russa, and Bobby Cox would round out the star-studded class. The outpouring of support from friends and families and fans, it was a bit overwhelming for Frank. President Obama, who was a diehard White Sox fan, personally called Frank to congratulate him. The family that had doted over Frank as a kid, supported him through thick and thin, showed up in Cooperstown to support their hero. In his acceptance speech, he graciously thanks family, friends, teammates, coaches, and the cities he played for and their unwavering support. In closing, he has an important message for the next generation of players. To all you kids out there, just remember one thing from today. There are no shortcuts to success. Hard work, dedication, and the commitment to stay true to who you are. As the Big Hurt was proclaiming his thanks for the honors bestowed upon him, the skies above Cooperstown began to open up. And one couldn't help but wonder if Frank's little sister Pamela was staring down on the ceremony with a tear in her eye, filled with immense pride for all the things her brother had accomplished, with her serving as his moral compass and inspiration. And folks, this feels like a good time to wrap this joint up around the horn like 5, 4, 3, as I put a big, beautiful K, backwards K, next to Frank Thomas's name in the scorebook. I hope you enjoyed this week's presentation as much as I enjoyed the work that goes into getting it out to. As Gunner has us racing up the tracks to get you briefs back to your loved ones awaiting your return at Terrapin Station, let's take one last look at those, so impressive, Hall of Fame stats and accolades the great Frank Thomas amassed in his iconic career. Let's see, what do we got here? Frank Edward Thomas, a.k.a. the Big Hurt. Born May 27, 1968 in Columbus, Georgia. Attended Columbus High School and Auburn University. Was drafted in the 7th round overall by the Chicago White Sox in the 1989 MLB June Amateur Draft. On August 2nd, 1990, the 22-year-old Frank Thomas becomes the 16,810th man in the history of the planet Earth to join the MLB fraternity when he makes his Major League debut, going 0-4 versus Teddy Huguera and the Milwaukee Brewers. 19-year MLB career with the Chicago White Sox, Oakland A's, and Toronto Blue Jays. 73.8 WAR, the 89th highest wins above replacement in baseball history. 10,075 plate appearances, 2,322 games, 1,494 runs, 2,468 hits, 496 doubles, the 71st most two-baggers ever, 12 triples, including the first hit of his Major League career, 521 home runs, the 20th most ever hit, 1,704 RBI, the 26th most ribs in baseball history, 1,494 runs scored, 1,667 walks, the 10th most free passes ever, 16.5% of his plate appearances ended in a walk, 1,397 strikeouts, so he had almost 300 more walks and strikeouts, 32 stolen bases, 23 times caught, 4,550 total bases, the 47th most in the game's long history. A 301, 419, 555 slash line, a 974 OPS, and a 156 OPS plus, which is the 26th highest OPS plus in baseball history. 5-time All-Star, 2-time AL MVP award winner, 1993 and 1994, 4 Silver Slugger Awards, 1995 Home Run Derby champ, 8-time AL Player of the Month, 14-time AL Player of the Week, 1997 AL Batting Champion. In 2014, the Baseball Writers of America penciled his name on 478 ballots out of 571 possible for an 83.7% clip to earn inclusion in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, in his first year of eligibility. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, seamen of all ages, this has been the story of Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt. And man, I ain't gonna lie, dudes, that felt good coming off the bat, nerds. I think I accomplished my goals this week with Frank's baseball journey. Bitty bitty bassy. I came, I saw, I freaking conquered. And I gotta tell you, I really enjoy jumping into the Big Hurt rabbit hole this week. Sometimes you forget how really special something is in a moment until you do these deep archaeological digs and really begin chopping up the stats and the history. And Frank Thomas was a special breed of ball player at the height of his powers. But this train, it don't stop rolling, baby. Even though the 2025 Major League Baseball season is entering our final chapters with the postseason and World Series on the horizon, I'll be here offering up that free baseball smoke.
You don't want that smoke.
And I'm going to keep it consistent like the chairman of the board's Whitey Ford. I cover the national pastime year-round, 24/7, 365, and I'm just getting started, baby. As Gunner has us headed back to Sherpin Station, I can see the Big Hurt bio getting smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. I now turn my attention to I never say die baseball hydra. I reach under my kimono, grab my katana blade, and with one swift hack, I chop the head off that beast, only to see two new baseball topics appear in its place. Next week, when most baseball fans think about the city of Miami, their immediate thought may be of the current Marlins team as the entire baseball identity of the system. And while Miami is a relatively younger city in comparison to other MLB cities, the seeds of professional baseball in South Florida, they go back to the turn of the 20th century. And it's a lineage that crosses generations, leagues, and even color lines. Next week, we're going to do an in-depth study about the history of baseball in Miami, Florida. But, looky. Ain't no hair on my chest, but I'm one tough cookie. Y'all know the dealio. That's another story for another pod here at Backwards K Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. I want to humbly thank this audience for lending me your ears while I preach the gospel of the seams. And I'm honored to be the servant, a mere vessel to quench your thirst for all things baseball. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless and win the day. Parents, if you see your kid, they're bored and unproductive AF, they got their noses in their phones and their pads, do yourself a favor and establish a memory that will last a lifetime. Grab a couple of gloves and a ball. Then take those fuzzy little nerf herders outside and play a game of catch. The history of baseball on Miami on deck. This train rolls on. There's no freaking stopping it. Still.